So welcome to Ask Me Anything. We are going to be getting started here with some key questions from some new members. I'll be tagging folks along the way. So if you have been tagged in this post or in this recording, it's because I believe that I am answering your question right now. All right, so let's get started. From members Karen McCarthy and Wendy Hammond, both grandparents. So good to have grandparents with us in this group, because absolutely we are multi-generational families, and oftentimes grandparents play a big role. So this is for all the grandparents out there, shout out. Hi, Wendy, hi, Karen. Anybody else who's joining, just say hello as you join, so I can see who's here, especially on Facebook. Put your just a little comment of maybe the ages of the kids in your care, where you're located, and if you have any questions for me, parenting coach Vanessa Callahan, I will be happy to address them. But here, Wendy and Karen, your questions are: as a grandparent, how do I open myself up to new parenting methods and shift generational habits to better support my children and grandchildren? I know this isn't the exact questions or topics that you asked, but it was sort of a combination of what the two of you had shared. And I just first of all want to commend you for even being aware that, generational change is absolutely possible. And when we actively participate in it as caregivers, whether we're grandparents or parents, or another family member or family friend, it makes such a difference. So just hats off for even being aware of this. I know that you want to learn new ways, Wendy, and I just want to honor that's why you're here, and what a beautiful thing. I know many people are thinking about the other caregivers in their world and wondering if they also have a similar wish. And if they don't, then I also want to just extend some compassion, and just really thinking about how we can support ourselves when maybe multi-generational parenting and caregiving isn't possible. So anyways, Karen also says that her children are adults and she specializes in treating children who have been traumatized, always looking for new tools and techniques to help their parents. So the two of you, being grandparents and being here is part of why we came up with the question the way we did, just because we know that there are folks out there who are really aware of these patterns. So what can we do? Well, I would say, first of all, don't try to do it all at once. Go one insight at a time. I think that anytime we want major change, we can sometimes go at it in this really sort of like this overhaul. But when it comes to defaults and generational patterns, it's good to pick something like one insight at a time. So it could be that maybe the pattern is that there's a lot of criticism, right? So maybe you're upholding this sort of value of perfectionism in the family and you realize it, you've recognized it. And so you can work towards having less emphasis on perfection and more acknowledgement of life being a process and things that we need to sort of bring in. And I just want to say hi to Janice. Hi, Janice on Zoom, and Sharon is here as well, one of my big-hearted, smart clients who's joining our Family Foundations Immersion next month. So good to have you here. Been so good about coming to these Mondays and our 6-part series last week. So good job, hon. Yeah, so I would pick one thing at a time. So if, let's say, there's a lot of criticism and maybe it's related to perfectionism or maybe even a need for control, but there's a lot of anxiety in the family. For example, one parent was telling me this week runs in her family. I would start to pick that one thing to start to bring in. So one thing you can do, for example, and that I have all my immersion clients do, is really think about connecting before correcting. Because without realizing it, we can default to, as soon as you come into the room, as soon as you notice something that's not right, just naming it and criticizing it and really trying to, in some ways, eliminate it, right? Like eliminate that behavior or eliminate that mistake, or, really drive home this lesson so they learn their lesson. And we don't even mean to, but it can come across pretty harsh and even judgmental and even unfair at times. And even cruel, because it's just like this is a child who's learning. Of course, they're going to make mistakes. So already getting upset that they're not doing it right the first time or this time, or maybe having some struggles with listening, isn't necessarily helpful. So connecting before correcting. I often urge folks to get into their child's world, the child's world, before making any suggestions, which is just a good, humane social practice, right? So anytime, like, let's say you're in organizational development, you're not going to go in and immediately give advice. You're going to find out what they've already tried, what's working in their perspective, what's not working. And then you can start to bring in some tools and strategies and some insights and maybe even some direct criticism and advice. We do this. We do this for organizations. We do this for our friends, maybe. We do this for, our peers. But for some reason, when it comes to kids, we often will just automatically skip all those steps and go straight to, I know what's going on. I know better. And here's what the solution is, or here's what you need to understand. And that can lead to lecturing and scolding and belittling and these things that we don't want to necessarily. So I'm using this as an example so that you all can kind of get a sense of what it might mean to shift a pattern. So that's one example, one that I have personal familiarity with. So I chose it for that reason, but there are others as well. So if you're listening, you have a generational pattern that you're trying to disrupt or transform or shift or improve, let me know what it is in the comments or the chat, and I can speak directly to that pattern as well. Or if you really relate to this perfectionism pattern, please let us know that too. We'd love to support you in just seeing you, and let us know if there's something that stood out about what I just shared. Getting back to the questions, and then Sharon, if you can, let me know in the chat if you're able to hear and see me. I'm getting some notifications here that may not be the case. So would love to get some help with just knowing whether it's all transmitting or not. Yes. Okay. Let's see. So let's go by age. We'll do some older kids first. So Julie Purcell has a 12-year-old and a 17-year-old. Yes. And they're in a phase, oh, bless them, where they know everything. Or they think they know everything, right? I think is the distinction there. And then we also want to just say, hey, we've got Veronica here, who's giving lots of thumbs up, lots of props to the grandparents. Yes, nice. So glad you're here from Kent, the UK. That's right. You're across the pond. Lovely. And I'm glad that you're here to learn as well, because you're amazing too. So 12 and 17-year-old who are in a phase who think they know everything, asking, how do I shift? Thank you, Sharon. How do I shift my thinking from feeling like they're disobeying me intentionally to acknowledging that they're becoming their own individuals? And how do I parent and coach them through these years leading into adulthood? Well, obviously, this is way beyond the scope of our our mindset moment here, but we can absolutely drill into one idea or two. So you're already on the right track here with this. And I think we even elaborated this question a bit to kind of drive home the idea that, thinking they know everything is part of their work of their phase of development. They literally need to take on that perspective in order to individuate. Individuate means having an individual identity separate from the family unit. And so part of why they come across as knowing everything is that they do, in some ways, need to believe that they know everything about at least how they think and feel and how they identify and how they perceive things. And it can lead to a lot of obstinance and stubbornness and discord and arguments within the family when it's something that is actually more nuanced than they're making it. So what I would encourage you to do with tweens and teens who are really saying, like, kind of coming off as know-it-alls in a way, like they think they know everything, is I would invite in, through my own modeling, some humility around, I don't know everything. And I would save it, though, for the topics or areas that that you need to reach them. You need to get through to them. Because if you take the bait and start going back and forth about everything that they know everything about, it's just going to create a dynamic of a lot of conflict. Does that make some sense? So if you're already experiencing that, Julie, totally understand. I raised my own stepchildren from 10 and 14 all the way through now. They're adults now, 23 and 27. My son just graduated, by the way, on Saturday from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. And if you're a Facebook friend of mine, you've been seeing me put up these proud photos of him and his older sister, my two stepkids. Anyways, I've been there. And so you do want to kind of choose your battles. But what I think is working for youth right now is to say, hey, I don't know if it's so black and white. Seems to me that there's more nuance. So for some reason, that word is really catching out there. Seems to me there's more nuance than how you're making it out, and maybe than I can see. I wonder if we got curious about this together, what we might both realize that we don't know. The humility is there, right? It's not, there's a big distinction between saying that and saying, oh, you don't know everything. I know more than you do. And here's what you don't know. That puts you back into a hierarchy, which is literally like kryptonite for teenagers and tweens. They will shut down. They will shut down. And the other thing you need to be willing to do, I found with tweens and teens, for them to even take in new information, is not only model it, but then also like model accepting nuance and being open to other ideas, but to specifically be open to their idea. And if you have a precocious younger child, listen to this too. Lucia's here from Scotland. Yay, glad you're here. Oh, and thank you for the congratulations. Yeah, I'm so proud of him and my stepson. Anyways, so back to this. If you are willing to really, truly, completely listen to their perspective that they know everything about, it's almost like, without that, they're like this little pressure cooker and the pressure hasn't been released. And if you try to add more pressure, it's just going to either blow or implode and they're going to be done. Does that make some sense? So let them boil over, let the steam out, let them go all the way down, keep asking questions, let them explain to you as far as they can about what they already know about the thing. And then I would be asking some key questions. And this is one of my favorites from Coaching Mani, who's on our immersion coaching team. She works with married folks and also just with all of us on communication, communication pitfalls and fixes. And she's all about, be willing to go first, me first, you second. But also what else is true? So just asking the question like, oh, okay, got it. So is that everything you know about this? Because I really want to make sure I know, like, I really want to know everything you know. Like, I'm so curious what you know. And then you can say, what else could be true? And that's where you can bring in that nuance and saying like, are you open to hearing what I know about this topic? Teens and tweens love when we check in with them first before we just tell them things. It makes them feel like a respected peer, and you're more likely to build mutual respect. And this goes with all people, right? But I think particularly teens and tweens are very sensitive to just being talked at. They want to agree to the conversation. They want to feel like they have some control, a measure of control over when and where the conversation happens. And you sometimes have to literally just catch them at the right time and be willing to let it go if you didn't. So yeah, many years ahead for many of you. You have to look forward to, yay. Or maybe you're dealing with it right now. Veronica has a nearly 12-year-old, and she is waiting for this know-it-all thing to kick in any day now. Now, not all kids go through this phase in the same way. It might show up differently where they need to individuate, but it's never harmful to find out what they know about a thing and really get curious about what else could be true. That's always helpful. And to model yourself going first of, being open to nuance, and that there are many perspectives. And isn't that an amazing thing, rather than something that's really, it doesn't necessarily need to lead to a conflict. Like, oh, there's many ways of looking at the same thing. Even just landing there and be like, how interesting. That's interesting. It looks like we look at this differently. And I respect your perspective. I'm so glad you shared it with me. Like, oh, what amazing modeling. Like, if they can model, like they can give that back to you by the time they're in their adult years, you've won a lot of the parenting game. So let's model it as much as we can. And there will be some things that you're just going to disagree with because it's crossing boundaries, it's outside of family values, and you will need to maybe be stronger about, and that's another question for another time. But I do have some folks here who are talking about, what do I do when they're crossing limits, and that sort of thing. So let's get into that. See, we've got Abby and Ann here asking questions that are along those lines. I'm going to pop their questions into the chat of the Facebook group so I can tag them. So Ann and Abby, we've actually had a conversation last week with yourself and your husband, which I really enjoyed. She was part of the 6-part series. So hey, Abby, and nice to meet you. Ann says, they generally want to know, how do I teach my children how to properly navigate their anger outbursts towards each other and with me and stay calm at the same time? Isn't this the mother skill, the master skill, like the top level skill, right? Anger, by the way, out of all of the emotions, tends to be the most triggering. How many of you can relate? Just put yes in the chat right now, or comments. Like, yes, I can relate to anger being one of the more triggering, strong emotions that another person can have towards you, especially, but even just in your environment. It absolutely signals to a very primal part of our brain that danger might be coming, because anger activates action, and action can sometimes be aggressive or violent and harmful. So it's natural to be triggered by anger. And so staying calm is a really, really important skill, but it's also like, I would say, I want to come from a place of compassion, that if you are having a reaction to angry outbursts, no wonder, it's like we're hardwired to. So let's just start there. So being aware of that is really helpful, because then if you get upset, if your lid flips, you can just have some compassion for yourself. Don't make it wrong. To see something like, oh, of course I did. Anger is kind of scary to be around. And I would recommend now, Abby, I think you specifically had put this in the chat, or put this into your questions before you took the 6-part series. I would be asking you right now, what do you think you could do to stay calm now that you've taken the 6-part Calm in the Chaos series? Like, would it be the tense and release tools, or the lighten up tools, or the, taking a break, taking some space, making that pause? I'm curious what you think would work for you right now. I have some ideas of what you would say, but I would love to hear from you specifically. But what I'm leading to here is like that it is absolutely appropriate to take space when there is anger in the field, like whether it's like in your child, if it's in you, if it's both of you, it's okay to do whatever you need to do to get to a place where you're more regulated as the number one priority. Now, in order to get there, you need to know a few things about anger. And this is going to help your son, help you with your kids in terms of regulating their anger and being able to navigate their outbursts, right? Particularly your 6-year-old, Abby, I know you want some support with. And I think that for, I think that it was a similar age, right? And 7-year-old that you have in your family. I think you both have siblings that are similar in ages. And you need to know about anger is that anger is usually an expression of, I know what I want and you or the situation won't give it to me. Dang it, right? So, and anger loves to be right and loves to win and also loves action. So yes, you can redirect to the coping tools, but sometimes the most important one is the emotion coaching one. And the reason why is because within emotion coaching, you can validate the emotion, help them realize that their body needs to move, and redirect them to something that will release some of this activated energy. And then on the same token, you might need to mirror that a little bit and be like, we need to move. If you can't take action, I'm going to take action. Like, we're going to move to a different location away from the situation that's triggering you. We're going to, go yell outside. We're going to, like really acknowledge like how the injustice of this and really take a moment to feel that, like, oh, this doesn't feel good when things are so unfair. Ooh, I hear you, honey. That's emotion coaching, but also joining in a little bit. Anger needs that. And if we instead resist it, make it wrong, pick a fight with it, try to shut it down, it can really backfire. And so it is one of the more volatile emotions that's most difficult to handle. But when we get it down, anger is also incredible. It's one of the, like I said, it's activating. It's also really clarifying in terms of values, and helps our kids and ourselves seek fairness and justice, and activates us to do something about a situation that needs to be done. So let's not make anger wrong. Let's find a way to be with the anger that's supportive, that helps us get to a place where we're calm enough to make sense of why the anger is here, and then choose from that place what we're going to do. So instead of hitting your brother, you might say, your younger brother, who's also smaller than you, you get to say, I'm really frustrated that you keep touching me even after I tell you to stop. Are you ready to stop touching me, or do we need to play in different rooms? We would love a 6 or 7-year-old to say that instead of, hey, smack, right? Or like, he's driving me crazy. And like, just throwing things around, going on a full temper tantrum. So how we get them there, though, is we got to help them actually calm down enough to access that language, and also teach those tools along the way. So comprehensively, lots of steps, proactive steps, in the moment steps, also repair afterward. But I think I've given you a few things you can try right away, especially around noticing your own reactions and moving towards that calm, and validating something about the emotion, for anger in particular, and giving it some sort of outlet, some kind of action that's a follow-up, so they can release some of that energy and maybe get their point across too. That if it's not heard, it's going to keep insisting on being heard, louder and louder and bigger and clearer. We've all been there. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, you don't get it, and I'm going to shove you. Oh, now you don't get it, I'm going to kick you. I don't get it, I'm going to bite you. It's like, oh, wow, great. Or say horrible things, right? Insults, destroy property. Like anger can be very destructive. So we got to get with it. Is that helpful? I'd love to hear any takeaways in the chats and comments from anybody who's here. It doesn't need to be your questions. Sharon, this is related to what you said when you first joined our Facebook group, by the way. This is where this topic came from. And I love that we've already come so much further than this, just in our conversations. But what we pulled out of your share is getting cooperation with your 7-year-old when you say no, you say no to something he wants. This is going to be a trigger for most kids for a very long time, and most humans. It makes sense, right? Like, let's just take a moment to kind of tune in and validate what makes sense about this. Like, not getting what you want is pretty much like one of the key ways that humans can suffer on the planet, right? It's like you really want to, make friends on the first date, and then you don't, and that's really frustrating. You really want to eat something that you find delicious, and there's nothing on the menu that you like. That is a human experience of frustration and anger, right? Anytime that you get a no when you think you should get a yes can bring up this really intense reaction, because at the core of it, there's this feeling of, I'm not going to get what I need, and I'm not going to get what I want, which means I'm probably not going to get what I need. And now I'm just pissed, right? Like life is not fair. And I need to be aggressive now to maybe get what I need and what I want. Now, with 7-year-olds, you can start helping them make distinctions between what you want and what you need. Is this a want, or is this a need? Because if it's a need, then we have a different conversation than if it's a want. That can help with your more intelligent kids who are just sort of brainy and in their heads and very articulate. And I know that your child has a lot of prowess mentally. So this could be a helpful distinction to make with him. Another is around fairness, and the difference between same and equitable is a concept you can bring in with a 7-year-old, which I'm not saying they're going to like your answer more, but I think they will they will come to terms with your answer. And then when they come to terms with your answer, your no, enough times, it does have a lasting effect where they're like, it's basically, it starts to feel ineffective and inefficient to keep pushing for these things that you're not entitled to. The other thing is to take the time to really give them a heads up on what they can expect in situations, anticipating the kinds of things that they ask for that you might say no to. I had to do this with students all across my teaching career, and I've helped a lot of families with this as well. Inevitably, there's this these expectations that form that if we leave the house, then we're getting ice cream. If we go to this store, then we're buying a toy. If we turn on the TV, then we get to watch for 2 hours, right? And as you see these kinds of expectations building, or like, you can anticipate them, get ahead of them. Talk it through before they say, we're going to stay in the car. We're not going to go into the store. And I call this previewing expectations, and or boundaries, and or, just routine, like what to expect. Preview ahead of time what they can and can't have in this situation, knowing the kinds of things that they usually ask for, so that they can have a heads up on it. And like, look, I know that last time we were in the store, I ended up buying you a toy after you threw yourself on the floor and screamed at me about it, because quite honestly, I needed an exit plan to get out of the store as quickly as possible. So yeah, I bought you that toy, but I'm going to be clear with you right now that that's the only toy you're getting this month from this store. And what we're here to do is buy a birthday present for your friend. So I'm telling you right now that if you ask me, can I also buy this? Can I also buy that? My answer will be no. And you're going to need to figure out a way to be okay with that. Ooh, right? Yeah. And I'm happy to help. If you need to squeeze my hand when you're frustrated, or you want to maybe not go into the toy section at all, or we want to put on a timer that we only spend 5 minutes in there, like there's all these ways you can help it be a more tolerable situation, because it's hard. It's hard to be a kid without your own money in a toy store. It is. Or if this is not something we can do today, or if you need to stay in the car with your dad and I go get it, like these are things we can do. Or if you think you can handle it and be respectful, be kind, whatever it is, take some breaths and really focus on the point here, which is we're celebrating your friend. This isn't actually just about toys. This is about showing our love and our care to your friend. And then we can leave the car and go in together. So what would you like, honey? Again, choices right back to. Would you like a chance to go into the toy store knowing that it means that you're going to be in a toy section and not be able to buy anything and we'll need to cope with that? Or would you like to maybe just hang in the car, or hang in that other section while I shop for the toy? What would you prefer? So helpful, right? And then you can even say like, yeah, and if you give me a hard time for honey, like I'm going to have to really reconsider whether or not we're going to keep the toy we bought last week. We might need to return it. Because I'm not a fan of this. Like toys are not a privilege. They're a right. They're a privilege, not a right. You can do that with your older child. Yeah. So it's like not something that parents are required to buy for you. Yeah. And who gets toys? Kids who can be respectful in the toy store. Yeah. And who doesn't get toys? Kids who, scream at their parents in the toy store. So it's up to you. Which one would you like to be? So I'm being a little strong-handed just because I want you to feel the strength of that, really being clear ahead of time and what a difference that can make when it comes to boundaries and expectations. And it actually is in service to your child, because oftentimes the reason why kids get upset when you say no is because they know that sometimes if they get upset, you'll say yes. And I know this is something that many of us are working on, because kids can wear us out and we can just give in, and it's totally normal. We all do it at some point. But what I can tell you is that if you can tighten that up, that's also a game changer, and that can take many months, but it's so worth it. Yeah. So that's a kind of future forward tip. Yeah. Sharon, let me know what stood out to you in that. I would love to hear as your mentor. Lucia says, oh yes, to change the location of the discussion is my takeaway from this answer about the anger situation. Nice, yes. Veronica says it's so helpful even for herself and her own anger. And Lucia likes to say, let's play museum in this shop. Oh, nice, yeah, cool. So let's play museum. In other words, we don't touch things and we don't take it away with us. Yeah, especially works for younger kids. That helps a lot. I've called it an observer body, like we're just observers. And they put their hands behind their back, or they hold a little clipboard, they hold something and they take notes, or sometimes I'll even give kids a little camera. They take pictures of the things that they think are interesting, like a tourist. So we're here just to take it in and enjoy it. We're not here to touch anything or purchase anything right now. Yeah, really fun. I love that tip, Lucia. You always have such gems to add in. And I'm so glad we're going to actually chat right after this, right? For your session, following up from the 6-part series. Really looking forward to that, Lucia. Ferdy, Jay's here. Observer body. He loves it. Yeah, man. Good to have you here. Missed you. Glad you're back for some more Mindset Monday. Let's see. I think I want to go to, yes, let's see. I have a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old. Okay. This is one of the questions that one of you asked that was related to the other, like Lauren Lister, Sonia Hasmi, I think is how you pronounce your name. Let me know if you have a tip for me around your last name. And Kristen Durbin. Yeah, welcome to our Facebook group. So good to have you here. And one of you shared that you have a 9 and a 7-year-old. And as they've aged, I think this is Lauren, as they've aged, there's more pressure on kids. And you want to help them to be more resilient so that when things go wrong, they're equipped to assess and find solutions instead of crumbling under the pressure. Oh, sweetie. Yeah, of friends, school, sports, society. So you're really looking for resilience boosting tools and tips. Yes. Okay. Well, I want to just speak to the fact that there's so much wisdom in your question. Was really impressed with this question because I think you're absolutely right. There is a lot of pressure. And I just want to acknowledge that Sonia has a 15 and an 11-year-old, and she's looking for tips on communication. Sonia, I would really recommend you check out the very first question, answers to the very first question as well. It's similar. And I also want to acknowledge that our third person here, Kristen Durbin, has a 5-year-old, and she wants to improve mood management. So this is kind of connected to the mood management piece. So emotion management skills and stress skills start at age 0. Really, it's what we model to our kids on how we handle our own stress that has a really big impact. So one of the invitations in the 3 keys to lasting calm, one of the in our masterclass on Thursday, was to really consider, like, go first, be willing to go first, be willing to be the one who is going to do these, who's going to bring in these calm down tools, these calm down practices, and going to prioritize sort of putting your lid back on when emotions are running high, and practicing these tools outside of those upset moments. Just that alone, like if you can commit to that even 10% of the time, you've already moved the bar forward. Does that make some sense? Excuse me, because children are social learners. Humans are social learners. We are not meant to learn just by sitting and listening to things, being told what to do. We're actually meant to learn by watching others and having others show us as much as, and even more than they tell us. So a classic example is if you're saying, calm down, it's a mixed message. What they're really hearing is when someone else is upset, you should yell at them things that they should do that you're not doing. That's really the takeaway there, right? You could hear it in my voice, calm down. But if you say, wow, seems like there's a lot of upset going on here. I know that for me, like I can feel it in my body. It's all tense. I wonder what would happen if I did some tense and release tools, right? Use my tense and release tool right now. I'm going to keep my eye on the situation, but I'm just going to do my little tense and release thing. I feel so much better already. Let me do it 2 more times. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This time I'm going to really shake it out. That feels good. Would you like to try it with me? No, that's okay. I just need to do it 1 more time. Okay. Whew. All right. Whew. I think I'm ready to hear what you're saying again. Sweetie, can you try again without yelling? That little vignette of what it was, 20 seconds, they can learn 10 to 100 times more by you showing them that than telling them. You should really take 3 deep breaths, But I should say, and if you practice breathing tools outside of the upset moments, and then you refer to them in the moment, it's different. It's not just telling them, it's cueing them that they have a tool that they already know really well. Okay, so that's the big difference. So I would say starts with us, starts at age 0, but all the way up through the ages. Like this crew is like 5 through teens, Lauren, Sonia, and Kirsten. And when you're heading into these situations where there's more pressure, I think we're all trying to protect our kids from that, especially as we've been navigating the additional challenges of virtual learning and the pandemic and all this lost time. And, school counselors are reporting that, all but, I think there were over 300 surveyed, and all but 12 of them said that kids are having a harder time with their mental health now, more than they've ever seen. So we have to be real about the fact that it's not just the regular pressures. Like, we're in a unique period of history where when these pressures are being applied, they're being applied to a less resilient system, a less resilient individual, a less resilient family system, a less resilient community than it was 3 years ago. In many ways. In some ways, we've actually figured out a lot from the pandemic, haven't we, about what we really need and what to prioritize. Anyway, so much to say. In order to build resilience in the family structure, you really actually have to make a concerted effort and take some steps. And that's why folks do things like join, my program or other programs to address any areas that are sort of missing or, could be strengthened or have cracks in them, a little broken in the foundation of the family. And what do I mean? So what I'm talking about are, these areas that I've noticed that when they're addressed, really do create a robust plan for resilience in the family. I call them the 7 pillars of raising resilient children. I'm happy to put in a link to an image of the guide if you'd like to see it. If you'd like to see it, let me know that you're interested. Just put the word guide in the chat and comments so I know that that would be useful. Then I'll go find it for you all. So in the 7 pillars of raising resilient kids, a few of them stand out to me around this particular question. So being resilient to pressure has a lot to do with self-management as well as stress. It's stress management, it's mood management, it's being able to practice those tools in and outside of the moment, like I just shared. But it's also about hacking your life so that you can properly have motivation for the things that you do need to get done, that comes from within, that doesn't feel like it's forced. It also comes from self-management in terms of your time and the way you run your daily routines and build in habits that are really healthy and also cooperative to the family's goals. And then also being able to navigate conflicts and being able to speak up for yourself when you need to advocate for yourself, but also how to repair when you're the one who made the mistake. All these kinds of tools build resiliency within families and communities. And when now that you've heard me say it, you can probably see it. It's pretty obvious, right? Because if you're able to solve problems well, get ahead of those problems proactively by creating humane and useful routines and getting clear about boundaries and limits, and then getting really clear about how are we going to motivate to get these things done and manage our moods, oh my gosh, we won we won the life game, and then hopefully children get to experience their version of that for their temperament, their age, the family systems, culture, but then also go into the world and be able to adult, because these are all life skills. I've had people say back to me, Vanessa, this is not just for kids, this is for life. And this is for life. So if you're curious kind of what you would want to focus on in these 7 pillars, please go ahead and take my parenting strengths quiz, because it will really help you to sort of suss out which of the 7 pillars you would rank yourself a 5 out of 5, 4 out of 5, even 3 out of 5 as more strengths, and which are 1 or 2 out of 5 in terms of how much of a beginner you are versus how much you feel like your kids are using the tools, the family system is really using these tools independently, and it's going really well, where you could even teach it to another parent or a peer and very comfortably, and everything in between. Right now, it also has an application to apply to one of our very few spots left in our Family Foundations immersion. And if and when you decide you want to complete that application, you can also sign up for a free 30-minute strategy session with me. which if you're a client like Sharon or other folks who've worked with me like Ferdy, like Jay, and has had a VIP day with me before, you know what we can get done in 30 minutes. It can be pretty extraordinary. So I'd urge you that if this is something, a topic of interest, of creating more resilience in your family system, really identifying what would make that difference in the shortest time possible to build up that resilience and really create that foundation. I really highly recommend you go ahead and go for it now and not wait, because the next time we have a cohort isn't until January. So if it does turn out that you are a good fit, a good candidate for the program, I'll be letting you know, and we'll see about you having one of the spots that's left in our July cohort. You'll get to join really cool folks like Sharon and other folks who've been coming to these Monday mindset moments and who'll be listening to replays. Yeah, no, thanks, Jay. Yeah, Jay says, definitely do it if you can. Vanessa's the best. Thanks, Jay. Yeah, thank you for sharing that with me. And you and I still need to do a follow-up call, I believe. I think we have that pending. So let's just do that. You can sign up for a session. I'll PM you. Okay. All right. So back to the questions. All right, I got a couple more. These are good. What are some mental, I love this question. What are some mental tips and tricks I can use to calm myself down on the fly when navigating conflict with my 5 and 14-year-old? Oh, 5 and 14. Yes, I remember this question. I saw this earlier and I was like, yeah, that's a fun gap. That's a tricky gap. How many of you can relate? Has anybody ever been in that gap as a sibling? Just put yes in the chat or comments if you can relate to this question, Jody's. Maybe you've been the sibling in the sibling dynamic, or you have 2 kids in a sibling dynamic where there's a pretty big age gap. I have a client right now who is in my immersion, but I also worked with her privately. And talk about pulling it off, like limited budget. Really, it was a stretch for her. We got really creative with her pricing and payment plan and everything to make it work, because I saw her dedication. And the other day she said something like, I now fully identify as a love warrior. I no longer make decisions in parenting from fear and anger and sadness. And I was like, we did it. You know, we just kind of came up with this persona for her, this like love warrior would show up and know what to do and what to say. And it's been really working for her in the one-on-one sessions we've been doing alongside the immersion. Well, anyways, she also has like a 4-year-old and a 15-year-old. And that can be tricky because their developmental needs are so different. And the 14 and 15-year-old often like so over it because of all this kiddie stuff, and they don't want to have to be sort of parented the way that the 5-year-old is parented or the 4-year-old. It can bring up a lot. So if you can relate, just put yes in the comments or chat with just that kind of dynamic. And what I would say, Jody, is that like everybody else, you're going to need the same tools in your toolbox about putting your lid back on. But I think you're also going to need to sort of straddle the 2 different age, like the 2 different planes of development that your kids are in terms of their like needs and wants and goals. Like being really clear that the 5-year-old is incredibly egocentric, doesn't quite yet have the physiological ability to empathize, although they can kind of imagine, but they can't fully perspective take. Your 5-year-old is also starting to figure out like where they belong in terms of having friends or not having friends, and like do they only play with the boys, do they only play with the girls, do they only play with folks who have they them pronouns. Like they're just like trying to find the group that they look the most like and feel like, and they're also love pushing buttons, so they might be finding your 14-year-old's buttons because they're experimenting with power and attention. So really being in tune with your child's developmental plane, no matter what it is, can be so helpful. That's why I bring in an expert. Dr. Luz is a child development expert to give us that insight in the immersion, because it's so helpful. So knowing that you're a 5-year-old, or any of you who have like 3 to 5, especially on the 5, 6, I've been describing kind of that part of that edge of the plane where they'll shift over to 6 to 9-year-olds. A lot of this stuff is running. It's starting to come up, and they're very new at it, and they're kind of bad at it. So they're just doing all kinds of things like to try it out, or they're too good at it, right? Because they have all this insight because they're like in it. So it's just an interesting time to just like be aware of that their needs are different. And then you have your 14-year-old who's really trying to, like we said, individuate, establish their own identity separate from the family unit, who you absolutely need to make sure that they believe that you get it, whatever it is that they are going through or they care about, that you get it before you ever advise or give any of your perspective. They need to believe that you get it. And if they don't think so, they're not going to take much in usually. So when you navigate a conflict and you want to stay calm, I would really be thinking about, how do I meet those different developmental needs within this conflict? So the 5-year-old is probably going to need to sort out like what they were even doing and why. They don't know. They're still figuring all that out. They don't know their motives. They don't know their needs necessarily. They don't know what they are actually trying to get from their 14-year-old. Maybe, and you can help them figure that out. What was your actual goal? Oh, it seemed like you were trying to get a rise out of your sister. Oh, it seemed like you were hoping to get your sister's attention. Oh, it seems like sometimes you feel smaller than your sister, but you really want to have all the power. Like you can absolutely say those things to a 5-year-old and help them figure out what it is they're actually after, and then guide them to a way they can do that. That's not going to, basically tick off their 14-year-old sibling. Then you can shift over to the 14-year-old and just saying like, what do you need right now? And usually it's a combination of respect, space, and, sort of like comprehension and understanding of what they're going through, what they need right now, which could be beyond respect and space. So you could just get into their world and being like, honey, and share 2 or 3 things that you get right now. Like you're studying for a big test. I know things in your friends group has been kind of tense lately. And, the game didn't go so well yesterday, or you're thinking about this game that's coming up or this performance. You've got a lot on your plate right now. So I can only imagine having the 5-year-old come in and do all these things to push your buttons isn't the best. Did I get that right? Just starting with that, it's just different than what you would do with a 5-year-old. When you can straddle these 2 different developmental planes for them, like Sharon says her sister's 9 years older than her, and it felt like she raised her at times. Yeah. I would say that will be key. And one other thing I'd add in there is that oftentimes, like you're saying, Sharon, like your sister kind of raised you at times. Sometimes the 14-year-old, the older child will feel completely put upon to play that role, whether or not they've like fully sort of given you permission to put them in that role. Like kind of like be the big sister, be the big brother, do like set the good example, be a role model, and it's like, fine, yes. And like, how about me? Like what, I still have needs. Like I still want space. I still, need breaks from my sibling or whatever it might be. So there's a delicate line to kind of walk when it comes to enlisting the older child to kind of help in the parenting. And I think the most important thing to do is to check in often and be really clear about when you don't want your teen to parent your younger one. Like, hey, if you find yourself starting to get like kind of more harsh or punitive with, your sibling, like let me tap out. Like let's switch up, because I don't think that's your responsibility to discipline your 5-year-old sibling, and if it's starting to get to you and you're getting upset, like it's okay, I'll take over. I can take it from there. For example, so lots of tips on the age spread. Hopefully they were helpful. Let me know what your takeaways are, especially Jody, but anybody else who is listening to the recording. And you can also even drop in the comments of the YouTube replay, things that stood out to you if you're catching it on YouTube. Okay. So this last one is pretty specialized, but I think it's really sweet and important to, sweet is maybe not the word I want. It's really important to recognize that there is diversity within our children's temperaments, their development, their developmental planes, our family culture, but then there's also some organic elements in hand. Whether it's like this parent, Renee, is saying that her 3-year-old has a speech delay, or some other less not in the bell curve situation that you're dealing with, which, by the way, can often be a strength in the end, because with that difference is sort of the impetus to get more organized around supporting a child and their development, which I think all children deserve, but I think we get more organized and have a more concerted effort when we recognize that there's autism, ADHD, speech delays, or any other physical impairments or delays. So that's the gift in this. I just want to point out, Renee, having worked with so many families whose kids are have developmental differences, and good on you to just like share that with us. So she wants to continue encouraging her speech development, but she also wants to know how to notice and utilize her other preferred communication methods in moments where she's feeling overwhelmed and can't form words. Okay, really good question. And Renee, this actually does, very much apply to everybody, because one of the things that is lost when the lids flip, when we're overwhelmed, excuse me, is the coordination between our thinking brain, our feeling brain, and our movement part of our brain. And part of the thinking brain that definitely gets dysregulated and misfires is our language center. So it is absolutely understandable that all methods of communication might be misfiring and or less effective when kids are overwhelmed. How many of you have experienced it? Your kid shuts down. They don't want to talk. Your kid, starts to say things that are all garbled. Your kid says they want something, but it's not actually the thing they want. Your kid starts making noises that you have no idea what it means, or they start acting out physically and you're just still trying to interpret what's going on. So that's going to happen. And for all of those situations, the actual articulation part is going to be hard for everybody, but especially if you're speech delayed. So having compassion for that, no matter what, is always going to be helpful. What I like to do with kids is come up with a code word and or a hand signal that I think they can access during those upset moments. And the one I like to use a lot is this, like Dr. Daniel Siegel's brain in the palm of the hand, the lid flipped signal. And I've had quite a bit of luck with kids being able to be like, like this, just this. And we even established it as in the classroom for many years for this one cohort that had a lot of spicy children. I don't know, it was like, you're the dragon, Chinese zodiac or something. We had a lot of spicy dragon kids who just had their hearts on their sleeves and their lids flipped quickly. I call them quick lids. And they would just come up to me and go like this, and then point to the calm down corner, and I would just go, and then they would go. No words needed, right? So I wonder about, for many things, actually, Renee, but I'm sure you're working on this with, on her speech development, but I wonder about coming up with a specific signal for her to be able to share with you that she wants some support, or she wants a change of scene when she's getting overwhelmed. And maybe it is the lid flip, or maybe it's something else. I've definitely had this from kids, like TO, like I need some time out. Like, let's take a time out. Let's step aside, a positive timeout. Timeout. I've also used this one a lot with kids about like time to take a break from each other. Like, guys, time to take a break. Another, you can also just learn some signing would be really helpful at 3. They can start to sign as well. And you can maybe come up with a word that is also a sign that can mean I'm overwhelmed and I need help. Like overwhelmed and help could be a good combination too. All right, y'all. Code words, hand signals, really good ones. And that often comes because you have had a chance to talk about it a little bit, role play it a little bit, practice it a bit, and then it works. So I've definitely had that with kids supporting their kids, parents supporting their kids through transitions, through upsets, through conflict resolution. So it's really helpful. Jay has said, as a past kindergarten teacher, nonverbal signals are really powerful, and signing is also so helpful and meaningful. Nice. Yeah, great contribution, Jay. Appreciate that. Okay, well, that wraps up our Ask Me Anything. If you have any follow-up questions or comments, please do put them in here, especially if you were tagged in it. We always like to hear like what your takeaway was. Hopefully this was helpful to each and every one of you. And I think we covered everybody. Oh, Veronica, hold on. You were even here and then we didn't cover it. I'm so sorry. Veronica, hi again. Here it is. What are some age-appropriate boundaries for my 19-month-old who experiences small tantrums? What can I do to build the groundwork for proper emotion regulation and setting limits? Okay. 19 months is a fun age. We're transitioning into lots of language. There's the explosion of like just movement and wanting to explore the environment and express themselves. So small tantrums are really normal, first of all. I think boundaries, it really depends on what the behaviors are that you're wanting to establish. Kind of seeing what their zone of development is, of like what they can probably get, start to build some self-control around and redirect them. What I would say is at 19 months, you can start doing things like you can work on hitting, you can work on biting. You can work on, hair pulling. Those are some things that some 19-month-old folks will do. You can work on what they can throw and what they can't throw. Those are some age-appropriate boundaries. And anybody here who's gotten their child to survive through 19 months can also chime in on some boundaries that you've put into place around tantrums at around that age for your child. That'd be super helpful. And Sharon, if you put it on Zoom, I'll pop it over into Facebook too. So hopefully that's helpful. You can absolutely use a lot of redirection at that age of being like insisting that they leave that space to another space can be a boundary too. 19-month-old kids don't know that they're re-triggering themselves by staying right there in that situation, with that stimulus, with that person, with that thing. Like a 19-month-old kid can sit there and scream at a spider for a while, actually, for example. So just wanting to insist that they move away and insist that they put their attention on something else can definitely do that as well. That can be super helpful. And then what you can do to build the groundwork for proper emotional regulation and setting limits, we covered a lot of already. Wouldn't you think, Veronica? Yeah, so, but it's things like what I teach in the 7 pillars of raising resilient kids is exactly those kinds of things, right? So teaching the calm down tools outside of the moment so they can learn them later. At 19 months, it's a lot of seeing you use them. And you can teach some of them as games a little bit, sort of like let's ride the roller coaster, and they can see you do that, and maybe they'll try to trace your hand too, or look at their hand. You can do it with claps and things that are a little easier for them to like try, or like they like trying to put their hands together. Lots of sweet things like that, where you just start to bring in breathing tools, tense and release tools, helping them notice when they're hungry, notice when they're tired, like all of that. Notice when they're thirsty, notice when they're hot, notice when they're overwhelmed, and like naming those experiences is super helpful. They don't really get like they can hear sad, they can hear mad, they can hear happy, like they can start to get those emotions, and scared, those basic ones, or surprised or disgusted, I would say are the ones that I would emphasize at that age too, can help. So they can start to name it. And last but not least, at the hour, I'm going to give you my top tip, which is toddlers need toddler interpreters. We need to help interpret their experience for them. So are you trying to show me that you'd like to get up on the chair? Are you trying to tell me, are you telling me that the food is not warm enough? I have to throw it on the floor. Like it to be warm? Oh, okay, so you can say warm, please, right? You're like, I'll warm it this time, but next time, warm, please. Okay. Constantly, are you trying to show me? Are you trying to tell me? Huge. I just talked to a mom of twins of 2.5-year-olds who were chatting about this. That way, when that behavior comes out, you're scaffolding for them the language that they can eventually use to share what it is they're trying to communicate without breaking the thing, dumping the thing out, screaming, and those kinds of things. So that's my last top tip. Veronica, sorry, it came at the end. I could have done it earlier since you were here. Hopefully you catch that. I tagged you in it and can let me know, drop a comment in the replay so I know you got it. I really want you to have that part. Okay, you all, we are taking next week off from this. Oh, so you're still here. Yay! I wanted you to know, though, that this weekend there is an event going on, and it's going to take me a moment to pull up the link. I forgot to do that ahead of time. Full full transparency here, but I'm going to find it. We have a masterclass this Saturday, and you'll need to attend live. And so try to make it to what you can. It's worth prioritizing the time because I'm going to give you my 5 top motivation hacks that boost motivation in kind and clever ways without having to use a bunch of rewards and punishments. It's free, and I'm building in some Q&A time. It's also the last opportunity to hear about the Family Foundation's immersion program and to see if it's a fit for you, for your family to join and apply. This is the last time I'm going to be explaining it in a group setting like this, where I'm going to go over all the features, what you can expect, what you get, and like reasons people join, and see if it's something that you want to really take a look at. And I would say, this is for folks who really want to make changes in their family and they don't want to wait. I was just asking somebody like, why now? Like, why do you want to do this now? And it's amazing what some folks have been sharing with me. They're like, I don't want to yell anymore. I really don't. I want to be a calm parent that feels empowered and effective and knows what to say and what to do. It's like, that's a really good reason. Yeah. And I was like, because if you don't, what then? It's like, yeah, months and months more of yelling and strife and conflict that we could actually be avoiding. I was like, well done. Nice. Great reason. What's another reason? Like, well, me and my co-parent have been at odds about parenting for the whole time. And it's really wearing us down. It's affecting our relationship. And we need a third-party source for information that we both, agree to. Because I keep sharing articles and he keeps sharing a book and like, we're just not lining up. That could be a reason, right? So this is for folks who really want this. Now we've got a few spots left in the immersion, and this is a great time to come and also just try it on, see what it's about. Maybe it's not for you now, but maybe later. So this is what the event's about. 5 motivation hacks for kids and adults, learning how to win cooperation, get kids on board with rules and expectations, increase their intrinsic motivation, and try and avoid those punishments and rewards. And then you'll also get a chance to see what's included in the immersion and how it works, and see if it's a fit for your family for joining our July cohort. And great folks like Sharon and others. So yeah, write this down, Saturday the 18th. You do need to register to get the Zoom link. I put the link into the Facebook chat. I'll also put it in the Zoom chat so folks have it. But that way you can also share it with other folks because it's free. So you're all invited. Let's make it a party. And you're welcome, Lucia. So good to support you. And yeah, don't be shy to come to the next masterclass, Lucia, and others who've been studying with me this month. And even if you haven't been, it's okay. Everyone's welcome. Please join us if there's something that you think you'd get out of it. Okay. All right. Lots of love to you all. Put up your heart. If you have, you can put some likes in the comments of other folks' comments. Just let them know that you saw them. We like to love each other up and support each other in the Raising Our Resilience space. I'm so glad and I was able to be here for you today and support you. And we'll be back together again in 2 weeks for Monday Mindset Moment. But then we also have our masterclass this Saturday, June 18th at 10 a.m. Pacific. Hope to see many of you there. All right. Lots of love for now. See you next time. Bye, Sharon. Bye, Jay. Bye, Veronica. Bye, Lucia. See you next time.